Today we're going to talk about language development, and before I begin, I want to make sure we put it in context. We've said it before, I'll say it again, blah, 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 blah. All development runs simultaneously, right? Here it is, Chapter 8, Language Development. Like somehow it's isolated. Obviously it's not. Clearly, language, we're going to get to at some point later on, is a function of cognitive ability. Children that do not have the cognitive skills will not have adequate language development. They work together. Language development influences cognitive development. They are, according to many people, language is thought. I don't know about that, but that's another question for another class, like the cognitive class. But then let's pull in something such as physical development. Children can't have linguistic development until their physical structures are in place. Taking it another step further, language is the primary way by which we have social interactions. Therefore, social development is critically hinges upon language development, yet at the same time, language will not develop without social interactions. So clearly, we're talking about language development as though it's somehow isolated, but as always, it's not isolated. Okay? So, first thing, of course, is what is language? Language is an arbitrary system of symbols, usually words, that is rule-governed and allows communication about things that are distant in time or space. Usually words, but it could involve sign language or something. More specific than communication. Communication is not the same as language. There's some clear differences. But the most obvious is that my dog, I mean, he communicates, trust me. His tail's up, his tail's down. He's telling me something, okay? But he does not have the ability to tell me something that is distant in time or space, right? So, the dog is wagging his tail going, I like what's going on 4 rooms from here. Or 3 days ago you made me happy. No, I'm sorry. The dog is limited to the here and now. And not only that, but communication. It turns out, say, I don't know if I told you this. This is really good. They take some monkeys, you know, and they hook them up to a brain scanner, and the monkeys go, ooh, 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 you know. And guess what part of their brain is active when a monkey's going, ooh, ooh, ooh? Those areas that correspond to human emotional areas. So literally, animal communication is emotional communication. I mean, think about it. When my dog's tail is up, he's like, dude, I'm happy. When his tail is down, he's like, get the hell out of my face, you know? So clearly, animal communication is emotional communication, and human emotions serve a communicative function. But these are though connected to language, because clearly part of language, part of, you know, the whole passing of information involves the words and the, okay? Humans seem to have a very strong instinctive drive to acquire language. Yeah, we're going to talk about some biological structures which are unique to human beings. 3 key features which differentiate human language from other animal communication. Semanticity. Words represent thoughts, objects, and events through specific and abstract symbols. My dog has up, my dog has tail up, tail down, and bark. Woof. You know? There's not too much more. He can't really represent ball or anything like that. Language is productive. Human language can be amazingly creative. We can produce ideas that have never been expressed before. I'm going to come up with one. Here's my creativity in motion. The bus was driven by the raccoon over the hill and far away to grandmother's house. I don't know. Whatever. You can express brand new ideas, and you can envision that idea. That's the beauty of it. Even though it's silly gibberish, you can imagine what that might look like. And displacement. We can communicate about things that are distant in time or space, and that is yesterday, past, last week, in the other room, something like that. I would argue also that we can, with language, we can have... we can communicate about things that are abstract, okay, like truth and justice and beauty, and it's real hard, given woof and tail wag, for my dog to say that's beautiful or that's truth or that's justice, okay? There are 5 different rule systems which run language. phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. We'll kind of talk about each one to a little degree. Okay? Phonology refers to important speech sounds and rules for combining basic sounds into larger units, that is to make sentences. Phonemes involve individual speech sounds. Okay? English has about 45 phonemes. The phonemes are like ch, z, sh, I don't know, there's a bunch. There's about 45. Around the world, there's somewhere around 150 of them. I don't remember what the exact number is. English only uses 45 of them. There's a rough correspondence between the phonemes and the letters in the English language, as in b, d, ch, z, I don't know, whatever. But as we said, some of them like the, th, the, does not correspond to an English letter. Phoneme, a theoretical representation of a sound. It is a sound of a language as represented or imagined without reference to its position in a word or phrase. At one point in my career, I was a anthropology major, and one of my courses was called linguistic anthropology. And in this course, in order to pass, this is what happened. Here's our final exam. Messed up, man. The professor played back some foreign, I don't know what it was, some quack-udle or something, dudes are making all kinds of weird shit noises. And our job was to phonetically transcribe it as it was being spoken. And it was really, really hard because it just came out so fast. It was just, and, this is about the only thing I ever learned about phonemes is that, thank God, I don't spend my life studying these things. Holy shit, okay? But whatever, it was a fun experience. Morphology refers to the rules for combining the smallest units of meaning into words. So I guess I better describe what a morpheme is. A morpheme is the smallest unit of language that has meaning. Like we already said, a phoneme was like t. But t doesn't mean anything. It has no meaning. In and of itself, it's just a sound. You can take a word and you can break it down into t, k. No, not take, right? T, k, right? 3 phonemes or something like that. But in and of itself, the word take only has one morpheme because you can't break down t, t, k. None of those 3 have any meaning in and of themselves. So a morpheme is the smallest thing. Let's say, for example, the word cat. The word cat, C-A-T, is a single morpheme because k, a, ch, the 3 phonemes that make it up, do not have individual meaning in and of themselves. However, cat, s, has 2 morphemes because it provides 2 pieces of information. Cat, the object, or I guess item, whatever, and s, which tells you there's more than one of them. So it's conveying 2 pieces of information to us, 2 meaningful pieces of information. Okay? The mental lexicon is a dictionary of long-term memory that humans rely on for speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And morphemes are an entry in this mental lexicon. And of course, other morphemes would be like ing, ing, like run, ing, 2 morphemes, right? Syntax refers to the knowledge of how to combine words to form phrases and sentences, like the rules of grammar. We all suck at the rules of grammar, by the way. Well, I mean, most of us know the rules of grammar, but we can't verbalize it. We have no idea what we're doing. We just do it. It's amazing, actually. That's a really cool thing right there. Let's say, for example, in English, a declaration usually consists of subject, verb, object. The boy went to the store, right? Boy is the subject, went is the verb, and object is where at the store. Whereas in German you would say, boy, store, went, right? And so it's different in English versus German, but it's still, it's the rules of how to put things together. And knowledge of syntax, as we already said, allows for the creation of nonsense sentences like, the raccoon drove the bus over the house to Grandma's, whatever it was, over the hill to Grandma's village, I don't remember what it was. Here is a C. Here comes another zig. What is this? I don't know. Kids can figure it out. What a genius. Okay. Semantics refers to the knowledge of meanings associated with words. Semantics is difficult. I'm working on some of this now with my daughter. Now she's 8 this summer, and so my job is to fill her time, right? Because if you let her get away with it, she'd sit and play the Wii all day long. All day she'd be on the Wii if you let her get away with it. So I don't. Okay, so I assign her some vocabulary words. I gave her the words, and as part of an exercise, I have her look up the definitions and to type them into a Word document. So she's practicing typing, she's practicing computer skills, she's looking up the words. Now, as I was going through her answers yesterday, just checking it out a little bit, one of her words had been adopt, and she had used as a definition basically the act of bringing in something that's not part of your, I don't remember exactly what, but I mean, she had set it up to mean like to adopt a child, all right? That was her definition, or the way she had used it. And so then I tried to explain to her that there are other ways to use the word adopt, I'm actually, literally getting at semantics. And so I said, all right, you could use the word adopt in a different way. And I said, like, I adopted a new textbook this semester or something like that. And my daughter, clever little shit, she says, Dad, that's really the same thing. And I'm like, I guess it comes from the same idea, doesn't it? Even though they're two distinctly different, subtle meanings, they both have the same underlying flavor to bring in something new, right? But yet, to adopt a child does not nearly seem to be the same thing as to adopt a new textbook, right? Because one is promoting ownership and one is use or something like that. And it's subtly different. And I suspect that as this summer goes along and she keeps continuing through these words, this is going to be a somewhat a common conversation that we're going to be having. Pragmatics, however, are the hardest. Pragmatics refers to the use of language to express thoughts and feelings, to accomplish things, and to communicate with others. This involves the nonverbal components often. This involves things such as taking turns, right? This involves not dominating the conversation. We have been dominating our conversation for the last 8 chapters, haven't I? Ha! Sucks to be you. All right. Using proper manners. I guess sucks to be you was not proper manners. I am so naughty. All right. One of the more formalized rules of pragmatics would involve the cooperative principle, an implicit contractual agreement. I love this. Contractual agreement, in which participants agree to say things that are appropriate to the conversation and to end the conversation at a mutually agreeable point. Lovely. Or conversational implicatures. I love this. Inferences made by a participant in a conversation in order to understand what's going on. Let's say, for example, one guy comes up and says, my car ran out of gas. There's an implication. The implication is, I need gas. And so another guy comes and says, there's a gas station around the corner. And the implication is, I believe that gas station is in fact open and does in fact sell gas. All right. So this simple conversation, my car ran out of gas, there's a gas station around the corner, there's a whole lot of meaning going on behind the scenes, implications that were going on that made that conversation actually quite deep, but nobody stops and thinks about them. So these kinds of language are difficult, and it's kind of a miracle that kids pick this stuff up, because we as adults don't even really realize we're doing it. And if we were hard-pressed to try to define what we were doing, you're like, I don't know, you just do it, right? That's why language is such an amazing thing to see in children. There's 3 main ways to describe how language develops. We're going to talk about, after these theories, I'll kind of buzz through them because they're interesting, but after this we're going to actually talk about how language does develop, right? But learning theory, the nativist, that is to say nature, nurture, and nature, nurture put them together, okay? What a surprise. The original learning theory came from the work of B.F. Skinner and operant conditioning, and he believed that parents' job was to reinforce and suppress or ignore or punish, literally, certain things. Let's say, for example, one of the favorites is one of the simplest is we're going to talk about children that are babbling. Okay, they go blah, 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 and they make all these different phonemes, right? Remember I said like 135 phonemes or something, and English uses somewhere around 45, something like that. And so these kids are going and making all these weird ass sounds, and the parents they reinforce some of those sounds. The parents are like, especially when a kid's going, and mommy's like, you said mommy, mommy, and grabs that kid, and and all that crap, and provides all of this reinforcement for certain sounds. Meanwhile, the kid goes, and all that shit is ignored. All right, and things that get ignored, according to this notion, things that get ignored just drop out, and things that get reinforced, like mommy, oh baby, mommy. And so we reinforce our children to learn language. Not only that, but we also provide models. Think social learning theory, think Bandura from chapter 1. We provide the models for the children to imitate. And we do, be careful. Your kids are always listening. All right, you drop an F-bomb and they're going to know about it. Shaping refers to how humans come to produce speech as parents reinforce attempts. The caregiver increases special attention when certain things happen. And it's the same type of reinforcement principle. It's somewhat simplistic. Parental shaping of language is very inconsistent across, different parents, but even the same parent at different times does different stuff. Parents do not teach the rules of grammar. They do not teach all of those syntaxing. They don't, because again, we can't even verbalize. How the hell am I going to reinforce something if I can't even verbalize it, right? What are the rules of grammar? I don't know. I just know they're right when they're wrong. And yet, here's the deal. With grammar in particular, parents, they've recorded interactions and stuff. Parents don't correct children when they make bad grammar. They just don't. They correct them when they make mistakes. They say, a dog is a tree. And it's like, dude, no, a dog is not a tree. Okay? They'll correct mistakes like this, but they don't correct grammar. They just let the grammar fly, yet kids, generally speaking anyway, produce pretty decent grammar. Well, whatever. They produce grammar later on in life. Okay? So it's not necessarily the best description, and it ignores biology. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is not happening. This is also happening. But it doesn't make any sense to say this is the only thing happening. Noam Chomsky was the original one, however, that came out and said, you know what? Kids are just born ready for language. It's just who they are. Kids learn language automatically. It just happens. And it's true. And I mean, it's a miracle how kids develop. I mean, as an aside, they've done some studies and they showed how many words the average kid is explicitly taught, as in like vocabulary tests or somebody sits down and tells them, versus how many words kids pick up. And it's like the number of words that a kid is exposed to explicitly described is like 5,000 or something by the time they're 18. And by the time they're 18, the kids know like 50,000 words. So they've been taught 5,000, but somehow they know 50,000. Where the hell did that all come from, Because they just pick it up. It's just magic. The shit just boom right in there. I'm dropping the S-bomb today, aren't I? Better be careful. The little kids might be watching this thing for all I know. So Noam Chomsky proposed that humans are so natural they must have what he called the language acquisition device, the LAD, a brain mechanism that's specialized for detecting and learning the rules of language and knowledge and universal grammar. According to this notion, there are certain parts of language that you don't need to teach to children because they're just born with the ability to do it. They just have it. The specific language, you need to have input in order to make this thing happen. Just like with any part of the brain, here's what happens is your brain is just sitting there waiting for input when the kid is born. I think we talked about this earlier with the deaf kid, right? And it's just waiting and waiting and waiting. In fact, we did it with the blinded kid, with a kitten in the eye, and then he's blind forever because brain shut down. It's the same deal, okay? That we have this unique part of our brain which is just waiting for language input. And if it doesn't get it, it shuts down, okay? And it dies, and it sort of withers away. It doesn't wither away because it's used for something else. But suffice it to say, it's there, just like you have a specific area in your brain that is just waiting for visual input. It's called the visual cortex. And it's just, as I said, it's gone, but it's just waiting for that. It's just waiting for that input. Operating principles, innate assumptions and biases that cause children to pay particular attention to certain features, such as word endings, order, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. Other species learning language. It's a joke, by the way. Can monkeys talk? No. That monkey sign language, dude, you got to work with a monkey for 10 hours a day for 20 years and give him 5,000 pounds of bananas to get 50 words. Didn't I tell you a kid has like 50,000? All right, and you didn't even hardly have to give a kid bananas. They just work it out, man. It's just not even in the same ballpark. I didn't want to get into that, but humans are just distinctly different. We do, in fact, have specific structures. There's no single area. Like, here is a language acquisition device, I guess. But it's a lot of different things. Connecting between Wernicke's area, Broca's area, I don't even know how to pronounce that one, and the angular gyrus, okay? It's these things together which form a complex structure which allows for language. Unlike the motor cortex and somewhere over here, the visual cortex and stuff. But it all has to go together, and it is related, obviously, like we said, to the motor cortex, because the processing of language requires production, motor production, right? You got to be able to move your tongue and your lips and your jaws and all of that to produce the sounds that you need, okay? It must involve the auditory areas. I don't have it in here. The auditory areas, because you have to be able to hear somebody else's and your own to get back the feedback to help you to understand what you're producing. Not only is there special brain areas responsible for language, but also we have other biological structures for making speech possible. In particular, this thing called the descended larynx. Very few animals have this descended larynx. A descended larynx, and I take your bio class if you really care, but suffice it to say, if an animal has a descended larynx, they have a hugely increased risk of choking and dying, okay? Because it makes it so that you could swallow down the wrong pipe, right? That's, you know what I'm talking about. Not possible without a descended larynx. Yet this physical structure, which leads to an increased risk of death. Wait a minute. This doesn't make sense all of a sudden from an evolutionary perspective. How is it possible that this structure, which leads to an increased risk of death, could possibly have evolved? And that is because this biological structure provides some major advantages in survival and reproduction. A few other animals have this, like male moose. Male moose? Male moose. Some animals, and when the ones that do, it allows them to produce a big sound which scares the living shit out of everything around it, because it makes it sound as though that animal is much larger than it actually is. So it can be used as a threat device. So in some animals, this descended larynx is used for this. In humans, it is used to create speech. Monkeys do not have a descended larynx, and so some of the first attempts to teach monkeys language literally involved trying to get them to talk, and they just don't have the... It took like years, and they finally got one word out of one monkey, and the word was cup, and except it was like, oh, that was it. That was the best they could get out of a monkey after years and years, okay? And a descended larynx does not even develop until 6 months to 1 year old in a human. Again, this is, as we said, language development is running simultaneously with physical development. Okay? So, must be a pretty big deal. Not only that, but on our genetic structure, there's a particular area called the HARs, the human accelerated regions. And it's like this, you know, your genome is different from a cat's genome. You got it? Okay, no problem. Yet there's an awful lot of similarities between your genome and a cat's genome. A hell of a lot of overlap. More than most people want to admit. Yet there's this one area where the difference between you and a cat or a dog or something is just tremendously large, okay? And it's crazy because you take this same area on the genome and you go cat, dog, pretty much the same. Cat, chicken, pretty much the same. Cat, ferret, same thing. Cat, monkey, almost exactly the same thing. But then you get human and it's just different. It's just completely, yet despite the fact that so many other parts of your genome are pretty much the same. You and a chicken are pretty much the same in so many different ways. Hell, you and a carrot are the same in so many ways, okay? But in this area, you're a mile apart. And so the human accelerated regions, which are different, seem to be those areas that are responsible for language, for the production and the ability to create language. You find that there are some genetic abnormalities that can occur in these regions, and in fact, these genetic abnormalities can run in families. I forget the name of it, some disorder. But the disorder involves the inability to produce speech. Okay, and so all of a sudden, these people that have some funky chromosomal abnormality at this region are like, they can't speak. Well, gee, yeah, see the connection between all of these things. No, go on. I'm not going to get the details, but in this region, like it says, there's 49 segments. The one that is the most important is perhaps the FOXP, the most important as far as language goes, is the FOXP2 one. Okay, it's just one of the genes inside this segment, this region that I'm referring to. Children, deaf children will create their own symbols. I mean, their brains are just screaming out, give me input, give me input. I'm not getting input, the kids will figure out something, okay? They'll do their damnedest to get it to work. When you expose in, whatever, never able to master grammar, okay, whatever, that's okay. I like this. This is actually pretty cool. This goes back to Noam Chomsky, where he said that you know, you're born with certain parts of your brain, certain parts of language are already hardwired in there, and these certain areas, certain things you don't have to learn. Okay, that then of course you need input to fire it up, but part of that fired up mechanism is bang, hardwired in there. And this is one of the, to me anyway, one of the simplest pieces of evidence for that truth. There are 6 possible ways that you could mix up a sentence with subject, verb, and object. As we said, the boy went to the store. The boy store went. Remember that? English and German. Now we go on, and if we did these other ones, these are all possible, you know. Store went boy, okay? Yet in the world, these 2, out of these 6 combinations, I mean, if this was just like a random process, then you should find 1/6 of the world's languages having each of these combinations or something. Yet these 2, where am I? These last 2 do not show up in any language. I mean, around the world, there's 1.5 million languages, and yet these never show up. There's something in our brain that is hardwired that just doesn't allow these to happen, okay? And VOS, this one is incredibly rare. So basically, 1.5 million languages that could possibly have these 6 combinations, and really only 3 of them pop up, right? Because theoretically, as Chomsky says, we're ready to learn certain things, and we're just not ready to learn others, because we have this hardwired inborn device which is screaming out for input, and this is the input that the humans have created. There are sensitive periods in language development. Yeah, at some points, individuals deprived of language early on have much difficulty acquiring language later. Older children and adults have greater difficulty learning a second language. That's a fact. That's a fact. Older children show less recovery from brain damage that affects language areas. I've actually seen some pretty phenomenal things where young children have, it's kind of rare cases, I mean really rare, but they have what's called a hemispherectomy occasionally, which would be literally the removal of one hemisphere of the brain. And if it occurs early enough, I mean the hemisphere, the head fills in with cerebral spinal fluid, so it's just a big ocean in there, and yet somehow half of the brain takes over and you wouldn't even know that this kid has half a brain. And it doesn't matter which hemisphere you remove, the kids will, it'll go around and do that. When children immigrate to the United States by age 7, their mastery of English grammar is the same as the native English speakers. Yes? As they immigrate later in age, their mastery of grammar goes down dramatically. Beware that this starts at 200. This graph starts at 210 and ends at 270. It's not like these older learners have no grammar. Okay? Their grammar scores are lower than a native speaker's, but they're definitely not 0, so don't even. That's the way this graph looks if you don't pay attention. As we said, prevalence, yeah. You need more than just exposure. It needs to be a social interaction. All right. So, not a surprise, the theory which is probably going to come out on top is going to be, is it nature or is it nurture? And the answer is, oh, duh, it's both. Are we surprised? Okay, so here it is. There is support for Skinner's approach. There is support for Chomsky's approach, but they're both very extreme. Interactionists believe that language develops from a combination of many factors, nature and nurture, cognitive and social. Piaget's is the most influential view, and he thinks, says that language is a result of a general cognitive maturation. That as our general cognitive skills mature, our language skills mature. That's true, but remember, at the same time, as our language skills mature, it allows our cognitive skills to mature as well. So, okay, proper cognitive development is a necessary prerequisite for normal language development. Absolutely true. That's not just some core, I mean, this is true stuff. Cognitive skills interact with environmental demands and language experience to produce increasingly Jeannie was a very sad case, by the way, a very sad girl. We do not know what happened to Jeannie. We just know that she was born to some really shitty parents, in particular a shitty father and a mother that did not have the backbone to stand up to the shitty father. And there was this girl, she was born, and she had never been enrolled in school, and at one point, neighbors called social services and said, hey, I think we're seeing, I mean, this guy's been living next to me forever, and there's this girl looking out the window once in a while, and yet I've never seen this girl. What's up? Go check it out. They go and they find out that this girl has been locked in a room for 13 years in the dark, and forced to sit in a potty chair and wear diapers. And I mean, this girl had nothing, okay? When social services came in and it took her out of there, she had one word, and the word was no. That was the only word that this girl had. Apparently, anytime she made any attempt at communication, she was beaten severely. I have no idea why somebody would do something like this, okay? It's severe neglect, right? When she was then brought into a foster families, I mean, her case was unfortunately not so wonderful because her behaviors were incredibly difficult to deal with. I mean, not a surprise, right? Not a surprise. But the foster parents that took in Jeannie were like, I can't do this, you know, this is really difficult. But yet the amount of improvement that she showed was quite dramatic. But yet at the same time, her final level and her, not just her language skills, but her cognitive skills went up immensely. However, when they found Jeannie, she was 13, and if we could say her cognitive and linguistic skills were at the level of a 2-year-old at best, they never got past the level of a 5 or 6-year-old. Never did. She just never improved beyond 5 or 6. But 2 to 6 is a major jump. It just never was able to go any further. I don't want to really do this one. It bores me. I mean, it's interesting. Remember, we laid out the connectionist model on the board earlier when talking about cognitive development. Language is a result of an interplay between biological predisposition and social interactions. Yes, absolutely. We seek social interaction when we communicate. Parents provide, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. That's probably the true story. The social interaction is serious. All right, so here we go. Some physical, actual changes. Around 4 months of age, children begin to babble. 135 phonemes, whatever. They are all coming up. By about 10 months of age, babbling starts to become more narrow, but it's still just a bunch of random sounds, okay? By around 12 months of age, you start to enter the one-word stage, and I'm gonna mention one of the things that's most important. What we've done here between here and here is a major trend. These are important. Don't get me wrong. The transition here are important, but it's this one right here that is most critical because this is where intention comes into place. Here it's just the kid's making sound. Here the kid is attempting to communicate. An intentional display in order to portray an idea. Okay? And this is, of course, more complex ideas. But this is just the kids making sounds, the kids expressing ideas. Big jump between those two. Okay? During the first year of life, perceptual skills that enable the infant to perceive and discriminate. Ability to make discriminations not required by the native. Here, in fact, let me show you this quick image. Turns out in the Hindi language, now I'm not a Hindi speaker, I don't know, but apparently there's 2 different T sounds in the Hindi language, so like to and to. What is that? I don't know what the hell that is, but that's the point. I don't know. However, if you ask a Hindi-speaking adult, you go, "Can you tell the difference between to and to?" And the Hindi-speaking adults are going to be like, "Well, duh, of course they're different. How could you not hear the difference between to and to? They aren't even similar at all." If you take infants from English-speaking homes from 6 to 8 months old, remember the habituation technique. So let's imagine there's 2 different T sounds. And so you play for the infant, you go, to, the same one. I mean, I know, to and to, right? But it's the same one, to, until the kid's like, okay, boring. And then you play the other one, to. Does the kid go, oh, wow, that's cool, you changed it? Remember the habituation technique? If a kid is 6 to 8 months old, when you change it, the kids probably are going to notice. If they're 8 to 10 months old, they're still probably going to notice, but less likely. By the time a kid is 10 to 12 months old, the kid is probably not going to be able to tell the difference between to and to, and by far the majority of English-speaking adults cannot tell the difference. So very rapidly, those phonemes, because literally to and to are 2 different phonemes, okay? Those 2 different phonemes, which we in English do not discriminate between, the ability to tell the difference just drops right off. Okay? It's just an amazing thing how that happens. But look, we are all born to recognize the speech sounds from all of the world's languages. You got it? Any one of these kids, had they been dropped in a Hindi-speaking home, it wouldn't have looked like this. If they would have been dropped into a Hindi-speaking home, it would have went like that. Okay? Just like here in America, you could have the same thing, by the way, and do like R and L. In English-speaking adults, of course they're different. 6 to 8 month old Japanese infants, 8 to 10 month Japanese infants, Japanese adults. And it's like they just don't make a distinction between and o. They just don't do it. Children begin to understand sounds to communicate needs, control others' behaviors through social interactions. As I said, at that critical point between somewhere around 8 months and 12 months is where intention comes in, where it's not just a sound, it is a social interaction, an attempt to convey meaning. At this point, they're beginning to initiate and respond to joint attention, both linguistic attention and things such as eye gaze. Joint focus of attention is a situation that occurs when both people in a language interaction are focusing their attention on the same object or event at the same time. That makes sense. It'd be awfully hard for two people to have a conversation if they're talking about different things. Lovely. Okay, feel free. As we said, language is all about communication and social interactions. The first sounds, like we said, are reflexive, non-intentional, just burping. Sounds become more differentiated and intentional. The kid is actually trying to make them. Cooing occurs around 2 months of age. True babbling around 6 months. Like we said, somewhere around 9 to 10 months, the kid is actually now attempting to convey meaning, not just intentionally creating a sound as opposed to accidentally. And so we can see some increasing complexity in the social nature of the language as it goes on. Yeah, look at it. Transfer from babbling to proto words reflects an intentional attempt to convey meaning. All right. Baba means bato. That's a very common one. Yeah, feel free. There's a lot of words. Single words appear around 1 year of age. Gestures, babbling, and proto words are still used for quite some time. The average child produces about 50 words by 18 months old. I still remember this is the age where, at the end of the day, what was a new word today? Oh, and almost every day you got something. Oh, she said train. Woo! And then you write that in your baby book and shit. You know? Oh, crazy. You should see the books. About 200 words by 24 months of age, 10,000 words by age 6, and they can comprehend a whole lot more than they can produce, okay? They are just some amazing creatures. Children usually begin with nouns to label things, but also with people and objects. I believe on this next slide here is the types of words that children gain. General categories like mother, father is the biggest, most frequent, what most of the words consist of. A specific noun is the next most common. Verbs are the next most common. Describes objects or events. I guess that's adjectives and adverbs, right? Emotions, I don't know what the heck this is, whatever. But we can see that nouns by far dominate the child's vocabulary. And that's not a surprise. My son right now is, I'm pushing him as part of his summer project. He's going to be taking Spanish next year for the first time. And so, of course, I got him making flashcards for Spanish just to kind of get him started at least so he's not walking in there completely ignorant. And not a surprise, when he goes to the early chapters of the Spanish textbook, the majority of the vocabulary does involve many nouns. This is probably a pretty good layout. These percentages are probably a pretty good percentage layout of how the vocabulary words are popping up in the earliest chapters of his Spanish book. Children learn meanings through parents modeling and labeling. They tend to use what we call fast mapping, where after one exposure, they get the basic gist of a word. Something like, is this a positive word or a negative word? Is it related to me or related to other people? I mean, just this, some basic framework for a word after just one exposure. Okay? Children often overextend, like dog to refer to all animals, or perhaps the dog only referring to your family dog, so that would be an overextension versus an underextension. What? Oh, by syntactical bootstrapping. All right, whatever. Like learning a word meaning aided by syntactical bootstrapping, where they use syntax for meaning. Yeah, this is some pretty important stuff. Will is pitting his cereal. Dude, not at the kitchen table, all right? If you're going to do that, do it in the privacy of the bathroom. So we don't know the word, right? Let's say a kid gets his sentence. We're going to say ing, okay? If there's an ing on it, it must be kind of a noun or a verb. It must be some kind of an action. And that action must in some way or another be related to cereal, right? So what kind of action might it be? Could be an eating or playing with or something like that. I don't know, but I can get some basic ideas based on the context here. Okay? Constraints or assumptions children automatically make about the possible meanings of a new word. This is actually pretty cool. A child hears a new word, and these are the constraints. Okay, I am not going through this whole pile, but here, for example, the assumption. This new word refers to a whole object rather than an individual part of a feature. If a child hears a new word, the first linguistic constraint or assumption is that it refers to the entire thing, not a small, tiny portion of that thing. Makes sense. The assumption that a new word applies to only one object as opposed to a class of objects. Okay. Hollow phrases are pretty interesting. Hollow phrases, in fact, are the level at which, remember we said you try to teach a monkey sign language and stuff, and how hard it was and stuff. Well, really, hollow phrases are that point at which a monkey's sign language skills stop. This is how far it gets. And it might say, for example, out. And you, the parent, you got to become a master at this stuff, because you got to be like, out. Does a kid want to go out? Is there something out there that looks interesting? Is the kid in his car seat and wants to get out of his car seat? I mean, what is out? Is out outside? Is out scary? You got to combine it and understand it. And so there's a lot of different things that might come out of that one word. And like we said, you know, this is like go car. What does that mean? Go car. And that's the level of communication that monkeys get to. They just don't get any higher than that, right? Telegraphic speech. It includes the words that are important for meaning, but they leave out the not essential words, like daddy play, which is daddy come play with me, right? And so what it is you know, it reflects limitations in their processing and production capabilities rather than a mistaken belief that words omitted are unimportant. They realize that the words that they're not speaking are in fact important, but because of limitations in their cognitive structure, as we discussed a couple of chapters back. The rules of transformational grammar are acquired gradually. Transformational grammar refers to how to change what you intend to say into a proper grammatical form. That's important. Over-regularizations like seed versus saw. Yeah, past tense. Important aspects of pragmatics. We talked about some of this stuff. Okay. Referential communication. Oh, this is tricky. Yeah, man, this is a part of language that is hard. Referential communication. Use of language to convey a message that the hearer will understand. It involves tailoring the message for the listener, recognizing whether the listener understood, and adjusting the message if needed. This is an important part of communication. I'm telling you something. When I teach a normal class, I can look in their face and they're like, they're not getting it. And I can modify it. Are you getting my message? Oh, no, I ain't got this little feedback mechanism. This is an important part to me. And I know I put people off by this, but, you know, here on campus, you know, sometimes you got a business to do, and 9 times out of 10, unless I'm very, very busy, I am going in person to an office to talk to somebody rather than calling them on the phone. They don't like that. They just want to, right? I'm like, no, I show up. Because a very important part of the communication is to see the person that you're trying to communicate with, to see what they're understanding, what they're not understanding. Okay? You don't get that in your conversations. Although I see that my phone has something called FaceTime. I got to work that out. Phone call where you can see it. Man, the Jetsons' future is here. All right. Vocabulary increases 40,000 words by age 10. Improvement in yeah, okay. Metalinguistic awareness. I mean, this is interesting, but it's I don't know. The explicit knowledge about language itself and one's own use of it. Children can self-monitor better. It's sort of like, dare I say, metalinguistic awareness in some ways is sort of like related to that cognitive idea we had earlier called theory of mind. Sort of like the linguistic equivalent of theory of mind, if you can imagine such a thing. An understanding of how it really is working, or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm pushing it there, but it feels like theory of mind is the best thing I could talk about. During this time, we self-monitor and self-correct speech more rather than just producing, what comes out. There's a decreased use of passive voice as an example of passive voice. Keep this in mind because when you write your papers and you write with a passive voice, it's ugly. The lawn was cut by the boy. The hell, the lawn was cut. Just say it. Active voice. The boy cut the lawn. Why is that so hard? Just make your point. Just state it. All right? And so sometimes I get papers from some of you all that use the passive voice. And see, I'm not a grammar person, and I know it just sounds stupid, but I'm never able to really say, is that passive voice? Is that what they're doing? I'm never exactly sure. I just know it sounds stupid. During adolescence, adolescent register. It's important, actually. Adolescents think they have their own speech. They sort of do. They create their own. Of course, like groovy. Groovy. Yeah, groovy. Yeah. That's Greg Brady. I like it. Became cool, man. That's so cool. And then along came Bart Simpson. Bart Simpson set out awesome. Awesome was, and in fact, I think Bart Simpson then created Tubular as well. I don't remember. That's another one I forgot about. More recently, Fat. Although I've been told that there's another one after that. I can't remember. It was like Monster or something. That's so Monster or something. I can't remember. Somebody much younger and hipper than me told me what it was. And I want to say it was Monster, but I can't remember. It's so Monster. I guess it kind of makes sense. But maybe that wasn't the right word. Maybe I'm sounding totally stupid. How can we, right, yeah, feel free to read that. How can you help your child to master language? It is in many ways a natural thing, Chomsky, yet at the same time, we the parents do provide a role model, as in everything. Bilingualism, more than 6 million children in the U.S. are bilingual. It's a shame in other parts of the world bilingualism is like 95%. All right? Shame on us. I had some roommates from Europe when I was up at the university, and they had like 5 languages, all right? And they mastered them all, not just they knew a couple of words. Children become bilingual simultaneously or sequentially, right? Either 2 languages at the same time or one and then the other. If second language is learned by about age 3, you could get fluency that will match the first language. There might be some cognitive advantages. It's an interesting thing. I'll give you just a little side buzz, just for something interesting. As I said, in my family, my wife is Korean, and I'm not Korean. So we were like, oh, we want the kids to speak Korean and English, but here's the thing, I don't know Korean. So at home, what do you think we speak? My wife, she's bilingual. She's got it. So what do you think we speak? How much Korean do you think the kids have picked up? Just as much as me, all right? I know enough Korean that I could pass as a 2-year-old, all right? My kids could pass for a 2.5-year-old. They've been taking Korean language lessons for years and years and years. Nothing sticks. Straight over their head. Why? They don't think it's important. Okay, it's really hard. This bilingualism is really tricky because it's related in a lot of ways. You know, let's say again, I'm gonna sort of work on the Korean community. It's what I'm familiar with. These parents, they bring their kids to America, and this is crazy. You know, even those families that have 2 Korean parents at home and they speak nothing but Korean in their own home, and their kids are teenagers, and then their kids do not speak a word of Korean. How's that possible? Your parents have been speaking Korean back and forth in your home since you were born. How the hell is it possible? Because language is a social thing. And kids see it as something not cool because their friends aren't doing it. If the friends aren't doing it, it ain't cool and it ain't something I want to do. And so we find that there's a difference between what you can do and what you do, right? I would like do. Give me some caca humor. And it's troublesome to these parents. They're just like, oh my God, my kid won't learn Korean. Why? He's rejecting his culture. He's rejecting his heritage. And then at the same time, as an outsider, I look at him and say, you know, you came to America for a reason, right? There were some reasons you thought America was so great. And it's not all great, okay? You come here and there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff. And you cannot just walk in and take nothing but the good stuff and not expect you're going to get the bad stuff. So guess what? This is one of the bad stuff you're going to be stuck with. And so we find with all immigrant groups, within 2 or 3 generations, the home language or the original language is generally just gone. And so we as Americans, we're just stupid. That's all we can say. We're so stupid and we're ignorant and we refuse to learn another language. And again, it's not this course, but you know what? Unlike other countries, we can get away with it because English is the international language. You can go anywhere in the world and speak English and get away with it. No problem. No problem. I go to Korea and the street signs are in Korean and English. You get on the subway and announcements are in Korean and English. You go everywhere you go, everything's in English and Korean. Sometimes kind of messed up English, but whatever. You get the idea. If a Norwegian came to the United States and tried to speak Norwegian, good luck getting a translation on that, buddy. You're on luck, okay? So this bilingualism, though I promote it and it's very important, the reality is it's a dying idea. A dialect is a consistent and systematic variety of a single language that is shared by a certain subgroup of speakers. Dialects often evolve from a unique cultural and historical background of those who speak it. Some of the most famous dialects in America, of course, would be like Creole or something like that. African American English, Hispanic English, and Asian English. Yeah, we make reference to Konglish in our own Konglish, Korean English. No one dialect is inherently better or worse. Yes and no. This is a politically correct statement. If you want to be taken seriously in the academic and serious world of business, there are certain dialects that are inappropriate and certain dialects that are acceptable. And though in some ways, it's just a way of speaking, this is what they learn, okay, yes, okay, but you think that you're going to have a career in public and you want to be taken seriously, and this is a cost to be taken seriously. You want to have a good job with a good paycheck, with good promotion, with good... This is one of the costs you must have. So is one dialect inherently better or worse? It depends what you want to do with your life, huh? So this is a politically correct statement that I'm always troubled by, okay? That, yes, there is no such thing as better or worse, but the truth is there are certain dialects that stereotypes are placed upon you. And if you're, stereotypes are stereotypes. That's another class. But if you can live with those stereotypes, and you know what they are, and if you can live with those stereotypes, feel free to speak any dialect you want. But if you do not want to live with those stereotypes, then guess what? Okay? So it is what it is. Again, it's not a fair thing, but it is what it is. All right, now I believe that was the end of the material for chapter 2, exam 2. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think that's true. The end of the material for exam 2. So we'll wrap it up there, because at this point I don't even remember what chapter 9 is, but I think it's a good cut point. So I will see you all the next time I meet you.